In the shadowy corridors of American intelligence, there exists a program so disturbing, so fundamentally twisted, that even decades after its exposure, the full truth remains buried beneath layers of classified documents and government denials. What if I told you that your own government once conducted experiments on unwitting citizens that would make the most sadistic horror films seem tame by comparison? During the height of the Cold War, when fear of communist infiltration gripped the nation like a vice, intelligence officials became convinced that America's enemies had mastered something far more dangerous than nuclear weapons. They believed the Soviets had cracked the code to the human mind itself. This terrifying possibility drove American spy master Sidney Gottlieb and CIA Director Allen Dulles to authorize a program that would shatter every ethical boundary known to medical science. The year was 1953, and behind the sterile walls of hospitals, universities, and psychiatric facilities across North America, a secret war was being waged against the human psyche. Patients who checked in for routine treatments found themselves subjected to experiments that would fundamentally alter their understanding of reality. Many never returned to who they once were. Some never returned at all. This wasn't science fiction or Cold War propaganda. This was MKUltra, America's most classified and morally bankrupt intelligence operation, where the pursuit of mind control justified any means necessary. For over 2 decades, the CIA would systematically torture, drug, and psychologically destroy thousands of innocent people in the name of national security. But here's what makes this story even more chilling. The architects of MKUltra didn't just recruit random scientists to carry out their twisted vision. They specifically sought out individuals who had already demonstrated their willingness to cross moral boundaries. Many of these researchers had connections to Nazi experiments conducted during World War II, bringing their expertise in human suffering directly to American soil. The program's origins trace back to earlier projects with cryptic code names like Bluebird and Artichoke. These preliminary operations tested whether human beings could be programmed like machines, turned into unwitting assassins, or forced to reveal state secrets under the influence of experimental drugs and psychological manipulation. When these projects showed promising results, intelligence officials decided to expand their scope dramatically. What emerged was MKUltra, a sprawling network of covert experiments conducted at over 150 institutions across the United States and Canada. Universities that parents trusted with their children's education became testing grounds for chemical warfare against the human mind. Hospitals where patients sought healing instead became laboratories for psychological destruction. The man orchestrating this nightmare was Sidney Gottlieb, a CIA chemist whose mild-mannered appearance masked an insatiable appetite for pushing the boundaries of human endurance. Gottlieb believed that breaking down a person's existing personality was the first step toward rebuilding them as a controllable asset. His methods were as creative as they were horrifying. Subjects would be administered massive doses of LSD without their knowledge or consent, sometimes for weeks or months at a time. Others were subjected to sensory deprivation so extreme that their grip on reality would simply dissolve. Some victims were forced into drug-induced comas, while loudspeakers played the same message thousands of times, attempting to reprogram their subconscious minds like biological computers. One of the most notorious figures in this saga was Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, a respected psychiatrist who ran experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Cameron developed techniques he called psychic driving and depatterning, procedures designed to completely erase a person's existing memories and personality before implanting new ones. His patients, many of whom had checked in for minor depression or anxiety, emerged as hollow shells of their former selves. The scope of these experiments defied belief. CIA operatives established brothels in major cities where prostitutes would slip LSD into clients' drinks, while agents observed the results through two-way mirrors. College students were recruited for studies they believed were legitimate psychological research, only to find themselves trapped in nightmarish drug experiments that lasted for days. Meanwhile, prisoners in federal facilities became unwitting test subjects for new combinations of psychoactive substances. Some inmates were kept in LSD-induced states for over 100 consecutive days, their minds systematically dismantled piece by piece. The researchers showed no concern for permanent psychological damage or death, viewing their subjects as expendable resources in the pursuit of the ultimate weapon. What makes MKUltra particularly insidious is how it exploited society's most vulnerable populations. Mental patients, prisoners, minorities, and anyone society had already marginalized became prime candidates for experimentation. These individuals had limited legal recourse and were unlikely to be believed if they reported their experiences. The program's tentacles reached into every corner of American society. Respected universities received funding for research projects that were actually fronts for CIA mind control experiments. Pharmaceutical companies developed new drugs specifically for intelligence applications. Even foreign governments were unwittingly drawn into the web, as CIA operatives conducted experiments on their soil without permission. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of MKUltra wasn't the experiments themselves, but the systematic cover-up that followed. When the program finally came to light in the 1970s, investigators discovered that the CIA had already destroyed most of the documentation. What remained were fragments, scattered pieces of a puzzle so horrifying that even hardened intelligence officials recoiled when they saw the complete picture. The few surviving documents painted a portrait of systematic human experimentation that violated every principle of medical ethics and human decency. The destruction of evidence wasn't accidental or careless. It was a deliberate attempt to bury the truth so deep that it would never surface. CIA Director Richard Helms personally ordered the incineration of thousands of files, knowing that what they contained could destroy careers, topple governments, and expose the American intelligence community as perpetrators of crimes against humanity. But some secrets refused to stay buried. A clerical error saved approximately 8,000 pages of financial records that investigators stumbled upon years later. These documents became the key that unlocked one of the darkest chapters in American history, revealing a web of corruption and cruelty that extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. The financial records told a story of bureaucratic evil, where human suffering was reduced to line items in budget reports, payments to hospitals for extended patient stays, reimbursements to researchers for experimental drugs, travel expenses for operatives conducting surveillance on unwitting test subjects. Each entry represented someone's life being systematically destroyed in the name of national security. Among the most chilling discoveries was the extent to which MKUltra had infiltrated academic institutions. Prestigious universities across the country had unknowingly become part of the CIA's human experimentation network. Research grants that appeared to fund legitimate psychological studies were actually financing torture programs designed to break human minds. Students who volunteered for what they believed were harmless psychological experiments found themselves subjected to weeks of sensory deprivation, massive drug doses, and psychological manipulation techniques perfected in Nazi concentration camps. Many emerged permanently damaged, their academic careers destroyed, their personal relationships shattered, their trust in authority figures completely obliterated. The program's reach extended into prisons, where inmates became unwilling participants in experiments that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. Prisoners were told they were receiving new medical treatments or participating in rehabilitation programs. Instead, they became guinea pigs for testing combinations of drugs so dangerous that even the researchers conducting the experiments wore protective equipment. One particularly disturbing aspect of these prison experiments was how they exploited existing power dynamics. Inmates who refused to participate faced extended sentences, solitary confinement, or loss of privileges. Those who agreed were promised early release or better treatment, creating a system where consent was essentially meaningless. The psychological toll on victims was devastating and permanent. Many subjects developed severe mental illnesses that persisted for decades after their involvement in MKUltra experiments ended. Others suffered complete personality changes, becoming unrecognizable to family members and friends. Some victims reported persistent hallucinations, paranoid delusions, and an inability to form meaningful relationships with other human beings. Perhaps most tragically, many victims never understood what had happened to them. They experienced mysterious illnesses, unexplained psychological breakdowns, and sudden personality changes without any knowledge of their connection to government experimentation. Families were torn apart as loved ones descended into madness with no apparent cause. The case of Frank Olson stands as perhaps the most notorious example of MKUltra's deadly consequences. Olson, a government scientist working on biological weapons research, was secretly dosed with LSD during a CIA retreat in the mountains of Maryland. Days later, he plunged to his death from a hotel window in New York City. For decades, the CIA maintained that Olson's death was a tragic suicide brought on by work-related stress. The agency even provided financial compensation to his family based on this narrative. But when the truth about MKUltra emerged, Olson's death took on a far more sinister significance. Today, decades after MKUltra's exposure, we're left with haunting questions about the true extent of government overreach and the price paid by innocent victims. While some files were recovered and survivors received settlements, countless documents remain classified, and many victims never learned the truth about what was done to them. The program stands as a chilling reminder that the greatest threats to human dignity often come not from foreign enemies but from those who claim to protect us in the name of national security.